Hello, nonprofit leaders. Listen up today because we're going to talk about fundraising strategy. And I have seen this problem from two different sides. So let me know which one is you. Are you either being like, we don't really have a fundraising strategy and we need one? Or have you had, or maybe you currently have, a fundraising strategy that is like overly complicated? So maybe you have a long fundraising strategy document, but it feels like there's a gap between how you take that document and how you start implementing that document in a meaningful way. And maybe you're even wondering, how do I evolve my strategy without taking big chunks of time to plan the strategy itself? And I see this again and again. I see it across nonprofits. I see it even across nonprofit professionals and consultants who essentially overcomplicate strategy. So what I'm going to give you today, high level, because we're not going to take a ton of time. This is not like a detailed webinar, but if you'd like a webinar on this, let me know. Pop it in the comments or wherever you're listening to this, reach out and say, yes, I want a training on building fundraising strategy. Okay, but stick with me today. So we're thinking about building fundraising strategy. And I'm going to tell you, in my many, many years of strategy, marketing strategy, fundraising strategy, it doesn't need to be that complex. There are only 3 categories of activities you need to focus on ever per type of donor. And I'm going to get into what that type of donor is in a second. And you shouldn't even be working on all 3 levers at once. You're going to pick 1 or 2 of these 3 levers to work on, get one of them to the next level or 2 of them to the next level. And then you're going to move on to the one you weren't working on, right? And ideally, you just pick one of the 3 and you rotate between those 3 indefinitely. All right, so let's get down to it. The 3 levers or levers, depending on what version of English you like to pronounce your things in, are increasing the number of new qualified donor leads. Let's break that down. What does that mean? A qualified donor lead is somebody who now knows that you exist and is the kind of donor or supporter that is likely to take action with you, right? So if you are a climate change organization, a climate change denier is not a qualified lead for you, right? So you want somebody who's already kind of in alignment with the larger cause that you work towards. All right, so that's lever number 1. Lever number 2 is improving the conversion rate from leads to donors. That is, as you measure it, right? How many people who knew about us went this month or this year, whatever amount of time you're looking at, from just knowing about us to becoming a donor, right? So that's how many people, and you're going to have processes around that. You're going to have tactics, things that you're going to try, things that you're going to test to see if they work for your donors. I'm going to give you some examples of each of these things in just a moment. So conversion rate, I'm going to say it again, improving the conversion rate from leads to donors. Now, pro tip, you've probably heard me say this before. I like to count a donor, right? How do we define a donor? I like to define a donor as someone who has made a second 2 or more donations, right? Because that first donation is usually like a toe in the water test donation. And sometimes we get donors who come in from campaigns. Like if someone runs a birthday campaign on Facebook, right? So it's my birthday and I'm saying, please donate to XYZ charity in honor of my birthday. That donor is not someone who gave a gift to you. They are someone who gave a gift to me for my birthday, right? They are my donor. They are not your donor. So when you secure a second gift from that person, now we're talking. So I like to consider them converted as a donor when they've made their second donation. All right. The third lever is to maximize your donor lifetime value. That is how much your average donor gives over their lifetime. So when we're looking at that, we're going to be considering how much do they give on average per gift? How frequently do they give? And how long do they stay? Essentially, what's our donor retention rate? So, right? So a donor who gives you $10 once a year and stays for 3 years is going to give you $30. That's their lifetime value. A donor who gives you $10 10 times a year, that's $100, and they stay for 3 years, that's $300, right? So that's what we're thinking, right? How much they're giving for each gift on average, how frequently they give, and how long they stay. That's what makes up donor lifetime value. Now, there's a secret fourth lever, or you might call it part of the first or second lever. I'm just going to throw it out there though, because it's important to remember. When your true supporters really love you and get really engaged, they can start referring other donors to you. So when they do that, like say, I love your organization, I've been a longtime donor, and I'm now telling my best friend that they should become a donor of your organization too. That activity is special, and I want to highlight it because it pulls two levers at the same time. One, when I'm an invested donor and now my friend is also invested, it increases my lifetime value because I'm more likely to give you more frequently, and stay longer when I've brought in my friends, because I feel a responsibility as far as my own integrity to my friends who I brought in, as well as a responsibility to you. And I'm bringing in new donors, right? Which means at the same time, you are increasing the number of new qualified leads, but you're not even doing the work so much. Your donors are doing the work. So I just wanted to highlight that very, very special activity. All right. So how do we use these three levers? Focus on one at a time, right? So if you are kind of new to fundraising, start by building your number of qualified leads. Or if you have a small, if you're totally brand new, the first thing is to find those leads, find where they are, build your mailing list, right? People who know you, and start getting them to trust you and like you so that you can turn them into donors. When we're very new, all we need to convert donors is have conversations with them one-on-one. So we don't need to have any sort of sophisticated conversion method, because we're just going to have conversations with them one-on-one. You probably know how to have a decent conversation. There's always room for improvement, but your conversion rate isn't going to be the problem as long as you're capable with just talking to people one-on-one. As the number of qualified leads increases, you may need to come up with new methods for converting donors, okay? Because it's going to be more people than you can have one-on-one conversations with. If you are kind of midway along your journey and you have a constituent of donors, but you've never really thought about how to maximize their lifetime value, that is going to be the best place for you to start, right? So, because that's the low-hanging fruit, that's the fastest path to cash. So you're going to start doing activities like having conversations with your donors, inviting them to things, learning about what they're interested in, just getting them more engaged so that they're on the journey with you, right? And there's lots of trainings around, if you think about, look at any training around donor engagement, a lot of that is around lifetime value of existing donors. If you are kind of the farther along, you've got good people who know you, a lot of people who know you, that's not a problem, and you have good systems for keeping your lifetime donor value up, that is where you should start, is improving the conversion rate from leads to donors. This is where we're going to really look at what is the process we're taking people through. How do we get to the point of making a first ask? How do we lock in, go from that first donation to that second donation? How are we thanking donors if we're going from first to second donation? How are we bringing people in to make that first donation? All of those interactions that we're going to have with folks who already know us, already like us, but now need to go to making that first and then second donation. Okay, then you just pick like whichever thing you think is the easiest next thing to level up on is what you do. So that's how you go through the 3 levers. Now there's one more thing you need to know. We're going to apply these 3 levers depending on the type of donor category. We want to organize donors into what type of thing they are. And I'm going to explain why I said thing instead of person, and what their motivations are. And our basic categories are individual donors. Those are just people who are giving of their own money individually. Foundations or grants. So you could consider both government grants and foundations together, or you could consider them separately as two different beasts, if you will. Private foundations tend to give because they're trying to fulfill their own mission, although there are thankfully an increasing number who give now to help just fulfill other nonprofits' missions. And then we have corporate sponsors, and corporate sponsors are looking to increase the niceness of their brand, right? They want their brand out in their world to look either more kind or more giving, or have a more, sympathetic view to their customers. So those are kind of the 3 or 4, depending on how you count them, categories of givers. And then with each one category, you are going to pull these levers. So let's just check in quickly. Like, where do you start with those categories? Always start with the individual donors. And 9 times out of 10, this is the only category you need to have a well-funded organization. After those individual donors, then you can think about corporate sponsors if that's a right fit for your nonprofit. And finally, I want you to think of your grants when you pull these levers for your grants. That is the icing on the cake of funding for your nonprofit. And I'm just sharing that now because I see many, many nonprofits start building their cake backward. They're putting on the grants first. And actually you want to put your grants layer on last, so that the core operations of all your operations and all your programming is not grant dependent. There's another category of revenue, which is your clients themselves. And there's certainly plenty of nonprofits for whom they have direct income for services they provide, but that's really a topic for another day. All right, to summarize, what are the 3 levers? First is increase the number of new qualified leads. Second is improve the conversion rate from leads to donors. And third is to maximize the donor lifetime value. All right, let's address just a couple of but Sarahs, right? So, and because I don't have you live asking me questions here, I will just answer a few questions I'm imagining you might be thinking based on questions I've heard in the past. So you might be thinking, but Sarah, we've been doing a gala. We've been told, we've been doing it for a long time. Maybe we've heard that galas aren't really great because they cost a lot for how much they bring in. But Sarah, where does our gala fit in this approach. So galas can be better or worse, depending on how you do them. And they certainly are not the place to start. And galas, in some ways, can impact all three levers. To make your gala the most effective, I want you to pick which of these three levers is the best fit for your gala or your event. Let's just tweak our language to your event, and then tweak your event to maximize what you're trying to accomplish. So if you want an event that maximizes donor lifetime value, then you want your gala type event to probably be intimate, small, make it an experience for your existing donors, make it filled with touch points about the impact your organization is making. Maybe that's where we're thinking about smaller dinner parties hosted by donors or visits to your nonprofit to tour and see what's going on. If you're trying to improve the conversion rate of leads to donors, then we want an easy to attend event, one that doesn't cost a lot to attend, one that maybe people can participate in line, and that takes people from being a little bit excited about you to being very excited about you. Maybe that's as simple. Maybe you don't even need an event here. Maybe you can make a digital experience where you're sharing out stories over a concentrated amount of time. So you're going to spend the next 2 months or 1 month sharing stories. You could even do live streams, sharing stories about what's going on at your nonprofit and inviting people in. And if we're going to have an event that's really focused on increasing the number of new qualified leads, then what we want to do is shift our gala to a larger type event, and maybe one that really encourages people to invite their friends and their community. So that's where we might be thinking about doing a walk or a run or whatever it is, or some sort of larger event that is, again, easy to access. So we want a low barrier to entry, low cost potentially, and easy for people to invite. Like, you are encouraged to invite your friends and expand the community. That's all the but Sarahs I have time for right now, but I encourage you to send me your but Sarahs or whatever your questions or concerns are about building a simple fundraising strategy. And I promise, once you have these three levers blocked out in a strategy, you just cycle through them. You just find activities that help achieve the goal, and then you do them till it's good, and then you move on to another one, and then you just come back and you rinse and repeat again and again. And that is all you need to have an incredible funding strategy. Until next time, I wish you all the best.